want to welcome you to Conversations with Chanda. If you don't mind just introducing yourself to our listeners.
So my name is Elizer Darris, and currently I'm co-executive director of the Minnesota Freedom Fund.
Yeah, what does the Freedom Fund do? You're new too, so there's a whole thing about being a new ED. But talk to me about that. That's a whole thing within itself.
So I'm a fresh new ED, and that's replete with all of the challenges and all the opportunities that come, with such a fresh and new title. So it's challenging times and exciting times simultaneously. I'm a ball of energy. I don't know what energy source is going to be from 1 minute to the next. And so it's an exciting challenge that we're on right now to take the organization to the next level. And so what the Minnesota Freedom Fund does, what any of the freedom funds around the entire country do, is look to disrupt the predatory practice of cash bail so that people have an opportunity to have a fair shake when they're going through their criminal legal system to be able to have a good outcome for whatever they're charged with. And so what we do know is that people who are incarcerated, unable to post 50, 60, 100, a couple $1,000s bond or bail, we know that those individuals typically have significantly worse outcomes than people who are just able to post. And it's really values and a means type test in terms of worthiness. And so based off of that, organizations like mine seeks to disrupt practices like that, in which predatory companies like bail bondsmen, really seek to extract resources and prey upon communities. And so we seek to disrupt that type of industry, and we are going to disrupt it.
Yeah, I love it. Just claim your space. And I feel the same way. At the Minneapolis Foundation, a couple of years ago, we really started going down sort of this bail piece. And I know that I've shared this on the podcast before and with many people, but the Kalief Browder story, which if you haven't seen it on Netflix, I swear you have to see it. You have to have a stomach for his story, but the leadership that young man displayed and the conviction that he had touched my entire heart. And when I realized that he sat in Rikers Island for, I think, 3 years and in solitary confinement for a year for theft of a backpack, by the way, and I think it was $900 of bail, I began to understand better through his story the impact that bail can do on a pretrial sort of before found guilty. What does that mean? What does that mean for justice? What does that mean for lives? And so that really informed my thinking, and we've been working on that.
So here's the thing, Chanda. I've been in situations in which, I've had bail on me. I've sat in county jails. I've sat in multiple county jails. I was, on the same case that I was, ultimately convicted of, and I'm sure we'll get into some of that. I've sat in county jails in St. Louis, up here in Minnesota, in Bemidji, and Crookston, right? I've toured the county jails in Ramsey and Hennepin. And they're very, very, very miserable places to be. And it is well known, and I mean well known, within people who are incarcerated that to be in prison, you'll have a better existence, more freedoms, and more access to your family than if you were in jail. The conditions are so miserable that people sometimes seek to get out of conditions like that, even if it means as an innocent person, they make a horrible decision like pleading guilty to a crime that they didn't commit. People also got to think about their jobs. They got to think about their housing. They got to think about their personal relationships. And so as you're sitting in these amazingly oppressive conditions, prosecutors are coming through saying, well, go ahead and sign this. We'll give you 15 years of probation. You can get out tomorrow. Right? Go ahead and sign this. We'll get you sent to the Department of Corrections. We'll knock all of this off right here. You won't even have to worry about all of these additional charges that we done trumped up on top of all of that. You were looking at 50 years. We go ahead and sentence you to 3 years. You can keep fighting it. It'll take us about 2 years. So now you're thinking like, okay, I'm going to sit in these miserable conditions in this county jail for 2 years and still get 50 years. Or I could just go ahead, get my life back on track, take this deal and move forward, not even knowing what you're really setting yourself up for, what you're really signing up for. It's a front end, back end cost.
Yeah. And they can basically, they don't have to tell you the truth, right, about what they're offering you, or do they have to be forthcoming about what they're offering?
So in a situation like when they're bringing forth the actual plea deal, they do have to be truthful. You're talking about the detectives. The detectives can use, more conniving and less than honest tactics. But once the prosecutors come, they have to be completely above board. And so you should not believe that just because the detective said, they were going to work something out with the state, that's going to happen. Most likely, that's actually not going to happen because they're very territorial. And so, an assistant county attorney is not going to really take too kindly to a detective or to an officer attempting to negotiate pleadings when they feel like that's their domain. And so they'll take it under advisement, but you shouldn't expect to get whatever that officer offered you. But the cat that's sitting in the woman or the man that's sitting in it, they don't know none of this stuff. They believe what they're being told, right? And they believe when the detective is saying, like, you don't want to go to prison. I'm telling you, man, it's miserable in there. People are dying. People are doing this. Just go ahead and take this deal and we can get you back out, right? And so, for people facing a lot of that oppression, I mean, the quickest, easiest thing to do is to just take the deal and get out. Save your apartment, save your job, right? I mean, people are thinking about that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So and then the main purpose of bail in the first place is to have a mechanism to guarantee that they will show back up to court.
Right. Yep.
So it's not necessarily an indication of
guilt or innocence,
of risk or guilt or innocence.
Yeah. And so it's not, and the way that we know it's not is because, like, someone can be charged with not paying a traffic ticket, and that thing that turned into a warrant somehow, and somebody could be charged with homicide twice over, right? They killed their family or something. I don't know, right? But if that person had a $550,000 bail, and the other person had a $500 bail, well, the traffic ticket, and it's not going to be $500. It might be $250 for the traffic ticket, right? I was exaggerating. The traffic ticket person, if they don't have that, well, they're going to stay in there. But if the person just so happen to have better means than other type of means, they're going to be able to get out if they put that $550,000 up, right? So it's not necessarily an assessment of who's a risk to public safety. Is do you have the finances to get out? If you got the finances to get out, because we are a right to bail state, you're going to get out. If you don't, you're going to stay in. And if you want to get out, take this deal.
Yeah. So
90% of people take deals.
90% take deals.
90% plus.
Wow. And then Brian Stevenson has the quote where you can be rich and guilty or poor and innocent. And that's basically what the bail system has done, is created another system in which the resources that you have actually determine the outcome, not the crime you committed, essentially.
And it's not even close. And it's really well studied that if you're properly resourced and if you're out of custody, you're going to get, when I say significantly, you're going to get significantly less time if you're able to bail out. If you're able to bail out and help to participate in your pleadings, even maybe do some investigative type stuff, if you're able to bail out, you're going to have significantly less time and a significantly better outcome. Sometimes we're talking 40, 50 months, like you're going to have a significantly better outcome than someone who don't have access to those type of resources. And they are at the mercy of the attorneys that they have and whether or not they have access to, investigators and whatnot. And so you're going to be at the mercy of the system, and a system that feels overloaded and overwhelmed. And many people actually do get under an underserved type of representation.
Yeah. At the Minneapolis Foundation, we've decided to focus on bail reform, sentencing reform, and probation reform as three primary levers of change that we are putting our leadership behind as a way to reduce overall sort of population in prison.
Yeah.
Do you think those are the right areas for us to focus on?
Yeah, particularly the probation, right? Especially if you're talking about the ISR and other Department of Corrections. So they have enhanced probation, they have ISR, then they have regular. The individuals that are on the ISR, and it's not many states around.
What is that?
So ISR means intensive supervised release, right? And it's not too many states around the country that actually have ISR units, right? But the individuals who are on ISR have a significantly higher probability of being violated. It's very draconian. It is very intense. When they say intense, they literally mean intense. If you're minutes late, you're gonna be in trouble. ISR agents show up to your job looking like the SWAT team, right? And so let's say you work at McDonald's. ISR agents, they'll just show up in a full SWAT coming in, 2, 3 of them, and they'll say, we need to talk to you in the back. And it's like, yo, I'm at my whole job right now. Employers don't want to see that. They don't want to terrify or scare their customers into thinking like these big SWAT looking people who can come whenever they want. Right.
So they're coming in because they were late to work or late to
No. That's a spot check. That's a spot check.
Just a spot check. But it's not because they've committed a new crime.
You didn't do nothing wrong. It's a spot check. Just checking on you, making sure you're supposed to be where you're supposed to be. Right. Employers don't want to have that kind of energy in their work environment. And so like you on a short leash now because it's like, well, you know, it's a right. It's not a just cause state. You know, but they're not just going to terminate you. But at the same time, it's like they didn't know all of that was coming. And you didn't know all of that was coming. And so you have a very, very short leash. I've heard, and I haven't really researched this, but somewhere between 60 to 70% of people that are on ISR are violated at least once, some multiple times. It's very difficult.
Yeah, and I know we've used examples of folks that, as they say, are still on paper and have responsibilities. If they can't get approval, let's say, to go to their grandmother's funeral, and they go and they're in violation, they can be sent back to jail. So we have an image of people that go back to jail as people that have committed new crime. And in some cases, that is true. But in some cases, they've actually just violated the conditions of their release.
It's actually very, very rare for it to be a new crime, right? There's a low, that's called recidivism. It's a low recidivism rate. People are being sent back on technical violations, right? Stuff that you know, when the average person does, it's not even a thing. It doesn't even really matter, right? Let's say I did, you know, go to my grandma's funeral, and you know, I am bereaved, right? This may have been a person that, you know, and it might be in Wisconsin, you know, and so just the fact that I went over there, came back a few hours later, I have violated. I will be detained and I will face proceedings. I might get 30 days, and 30 days might not seem like a lot, but if you secured an apartment, secured a job, and a number of other things, now here you are, they can restructure you, meaning don't send you back, meaning just so say, okay, well, now you got to come into the house at, I don't know, 10 o'clock. They could do that. That's a tool that's in their arsenal, but they're choosing, but COVID has stopped this a little bit. Before then, they were choosing, and they might kick it right back up once, you know, the COVID crisis dissipates. They're choosing to violate people and send them back for 30, 60, 90 days. And at that time, no employer going to be holding on to your job for no entire month. There's no landlord. How are you going to pay the rent? Most people are living check to check. So yeah, you got to go. You're evicted, right? Your car, that might get taken away. Who knows? So now you got to get back out and you're starting from scratch again. And you have to do the work to build that stuff right back up. Or you're going to get violated again. And it turns into this.
Yeah, just sort of a vicious cycle that people can't get off of. Do you have any idea what the impact on the kids are?
So, again, the agents, not just ISR agents, but any agents really, they can come to your house when they want. I mean, that's you sign up for them to be able to come when they want. Some of them come at night. And, you know, children, I mean, just imagine, you know, I'm a little kid, my dad, my mom, we all watching a movie together. I don't know, Bambi, who knows? You get at the door, right? It's like, oh, weird way to knock, but let's go check this out. This person comes in and you're seeing your dad being directed, being,
Demasculated. Yeah.
it is very in front of the family, right? And the only thing the dad probably would really want to do is say, can we go in the back and talk? You know what I mean? Like, because the kid is scared, you got this, because they typically show up, several deep, you got this big, and it's like, this is this person's image of their father, of this interaction that's happening. And if anything goes wrong, now the dad is gone, and it's like, they took my dad away, right? For whatever reason. And so I just have an issue with, I'm gonna always have an issue when agents show up to someone's job. I feel like that's out of bounds. I feel like it's totally unnecessary. I feel like it disproportionately happens to people that look like you and I. And if reform needs to happen, it needs to be in a space like that. There is absolutely no reason in the world, absolutely no reason in the world for agents to show up to someone's place of work. Absolutely no reason, unless they believe that something dishonest has happened and that you are harming someone in that workplace, or that you are doing something less than legal inside of that workplace. Then I can understand it, right? But to just show up as a spot check, to me, is wholly inappropriate, right? Yeah. To show up too late at night to someone's home that they have family in is inappropriate. It's inappropriate, and it's emasculating, and it's dehumanizing, right? And so I understand, they want people on their toes. They want people to know at any time we can just show up. Okay, I get it, right? You don't know, what hour it's going to come from. So I guess the notion is to just be on your P's and Q's at all hours, at all times, because we could just anytime come. Okay, I get that, right? That doesn't make it any less dehumanizing, demoralizing, and embarrassing in front of my family that this is happening. Because really, can we just talk on the side? You know what I mean? Like, I don't want my wife and children to see this. I'm trying to read it. I don't want neighbors.
Yeah, it also doesn't seem to have deterred any sort of crime or reduced. I don't know what the point of it is, I guess. I don't know what the impact has been other than what you're saying, command and control.
It's command and control, period. That is the absolute heart and soul of it. Yeah. That's it. That's all it is. And like I said, even if we took off the table the home visits, there's absolutely no reason to go to a person's place of work. Absolutely no reason. And that's the type of practice that should stop immediately.
Yes. Okay. So then this comes up for me. Like, I think we stopped the no-knock warrants. How does that factor into the agents being able to come to home? Because it feels like it's a very
different. It's different.
Okay.
Because you're technically, so I can't vote, right? I can't vote because I'm on probation, right? And so in Minnesota, you have to serve 2/3 of your sentence physically in custody, and you can serve 1/3 of your sentence not physically in custody. And so technically, while we are out here, we're still under the care of the Commission of Corrections. We're just like freely doing it, right? And so the level of protections that's afforded to you as a citizen, I don't receive those same. So right now, the agent that's over me, because I'm still on probation, there's an agent over me. They can come and search my house right now, just right now, search the whole house, right? It doesn't matter who I have in here, what I got going on. They can just search. A police officer can, if I get pulled over for a speeding ticket, they see I'm on probation, they can call the probation officer. With you, they would need probable cause and a lot of other things. But with me, the probation officer can tell the officer, search the car, make me get out, and they can just search it. I lose a lot of those protections. Like, you can vote, I can't vote. So a lot of the typical protections that's afforded to people, those of us who are on probation or parole, we're not afforded those protections.
Let's talk about how you ended up on parole and on probation. Because we've talked about it a little bit, but it's such, it's part of who you are and part of your journey. We had an opportunity to get to know each other a little bit, and after we talk about this piece, I want to talk about our work with the Police Deadly Force Working Group. But share as much as you feel comfortable about sort of your.
I'm just checking to see how much time we get.
I know. I mean, tell me. I want to know a little bit, because I just think it's an important for people to have context of what's happening out here.
Actually, so, a lot of people look at me today and they think like, oh, he's an attorney, he's this. And there's all of these preconceived notions of who I am, what I'm about, where I have gone, and what I have done. And absolutely none of them are right. And then absolutely none of them are wrong. I'm all of that and none of that, right? And so one of my mentors said to me, they should be able to smell the penitentiary on you, right? Like, we should have done what we needed to do at such a level, they shouldn't even be able to smell it on you, right? And because I sat up under the tutelage of men in there, of towering characters and towering intellect, some of the best men to date that I've ever met in my life. And I done ran into governors, mayors, CEOs, executive directors, right? Shot callers in the streets. And these brothers to date are some of the best men I've ever met in my entire life. And they mentored me from a teenager till I ultimately was released from prison at 32. And so the backstory to that is, when I was 15 years old, I ran away from home with a carnival. I couldn't take it no more. I ain't want to abide by no more rules, policies, restrictions, guidelines that my mom was putting down on me. I said, give us free.
Give us free. I mean, can we talk about the carnival piece? Did you say a carnival?
Carnival.
I'm just curious. Well, we can get to that later. Anyway, go ahead.
Say nothing about no elephants and tiger. It's a carnival.
A carnival in St. Louis just came through when you just went with them.
With rides and games. There ain't no tigers and bears and all of that old minus. This is rides and game, not the circus. People be aggravating me with that.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. I kind of did that. Okay, I'm with you.
It's carnival.
Carnival.
Mm-hmm. And I was a concessionaire. Right? And so I made a decision that, I didn't want to be home no more. And so, the carnival came to town, and I worked for it, because I thought it was I was 15. I thought it was a really cool way to pick up girls, you know what I mean? And so they'll walk by the game and I could call out to any of them, just call over, hey, you tried this game yet? They come on, what I got to do? And I had fun. I had a good time. And so, I was in summer school because I had failing grades. I was in the 8th grade. And I got into a fight. And then I was expelled. So I knew, dang, now I got to go home, tell my mom I'm expelled. I'm flunking. So I'm definitely going to be in the 8th grade. So I don't got nothing else to look forward to in this. So I was like, you know what, that's it. And so I decided to leave with the carnival, to my mother's great chagrin, right? And she tried her best to get me to, she was following behind me in the car. I had a duffel bag full of clothes and I took a couple of her pillows. And so she was following me behind in the car. She jumped out. She was like, where are you going? I said, I'm leaving with the carnival, Mom. It's time. And then she was like, well, you ain't taking my pillows. She took the pillows away. I left. And I had traveled around the better part of the United States with this carnival, as far south as Albuquerque, New Mexico, as far north as Roseau, Minnesota, Amarillo, Texas, Minot, North Dakota, Tulsa, just a number, Denver, Colorado. That was one of the most beautiful cities I had been to. And so I just traveled around the better part of the United States with this carnival. But, it wasn't the easiest life at all. It wasn't the easiest life in the least bit. You see, it's a motley crew of people who would almost never typically have contact with each other, right? And so with us, you had Crips, Bloods, Stones, Vice Lords, right? Who really geographically would be dispersed. And so you wouldn't have access to these groups, right? And in St. Louis, you're like gridlocked almost. And so I never went to the Arch. You really don't do all that extra traveling around, even in the city. So the notion of outside of the city, you never even thought about that. People live and die on blocks, right? And so now you got these groups clashing. And I found myself in the middle of a lot of that. And, ultimately, I'll, cut the story short, but ultimately, in the midst of one of these clashes, I participated in taking someone's life. And, it was a horrible and faithful decision to make. It was the culmination of multiple skirmishes and clashes between groups of individuals. And a man lost his life. And I had responsibility in there, for the part that I played. And I then made the decision not to testify against the other adults that was involved, because I was 15 and these were grown men. These guys was in their 20s and 30s and 40s, all of them. And so everybody was arrested, but not everyone made that type of decision that I made. I said, they offered me, 8 years. They offered me 12 years. They offered me 15 years. They offered me 30 years. And at this point, I was like, y'all stop bringing deals, because y'all, first of all, y'all keep going up, right? And if the most I can face is 30 years, why would I plead guilty to 30 years? I'm going to just go to trial. But I was facing first-degree counts. And in Minnesota, there's an automatic sentence if you're convicted. I think that they thought in no way, shape, or form I would take this all the way to trial.
You took it to trial, and the trial was here in Minnesota.
It was right here in Minnesota because the crime happened in Minnesota, even though they came to St. Louis and brought me back up here.
Okay.
And so I lost that trial. And I was sentenced to life in prison as a teenager.
At 15?
At 16 at this time.
And what, you could be sentenced to life in prison at age 15 in our state?
At 14.
At 14, okay.
So there was 14-year-olds. One guy, his name is Jerry Vang, one of my closest buddies. He was so dang tiny. When he first walked into the prison, I remember, and I'm a teenager too. I was probably about 17. And I remember seeing this little bitty dude come through, Jerry Vang. And I was like, they got a whole kid up in here. And I'm a kid myself, right? But he was so incredibly tiny. And I guess he was involved in a drive-by shooting. He wasn't the shooter, but he was there. And in Minnesota, if you're in the vehicle and if you don't seek to stop whatever's happening, you are considered as guilty as everyone else, right? And he also didn't take a deal to testify against the adults. Because he didn't, he received an accessory charge. And in Minnesota, if you're an accessory to first-degree murder, you're also sentenced to life in prison. And so he received a life imprisonment sentence as an accessory to first-degree murder. I'm not sure what they expected out of this 14-year-old when you have grown men with guns, but I guess he needed to intervene in that situation, and his failure to do so cost him dearly. But again, typically the expectation is for us to take deals. That is what they expected. I'm sure they were also shocked that Jerry also did not take a deal and face that eventual outcome, which was a life imprisonment sentence. He's still in there right now, as a matter of fact.
Is he?
14 years old, sentenced to life.
That's crazy. That's sad.
It's been about 20 years.
And so you served how much time?
So I served 17. Jerry's been in there for a little over 20 years.
What was that conversation like with your mother?
When I first received the sentence?
When you first had to tell her you were going to jail, what was that like when she's, I have this image, I'm a mom of sons, right, of kids, and she's following you with the backpack. She's pouring into you, right? So it wasn't like she wasn't caring for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then now you have to tell her that you were involved in this crime. Did you?
I'll never forget. I didn't have to because the cops did. And so I went to St. Louis. I went back home. And I enrolled back in school and everything. I was determined at this point to pass 8th grade. I was going to just go on with my life, right? And no, right? The arm of the law is long. And so it reached out and touched me like AT&T. Mom always told us that if you get in trouble with the police, I am going to turn your butt in. She always said that growing up. I mean, always said it, right? And so they came, they knocked, and they were, 20 of them all in their tactical stuff. And I was asleep, and I remember dreaming that like they were coming down, and they were actually coming down, and Mom was leading them. Then Mom stood to the side, and they got me, they lifted me off, cuffed me all up. And then she finally asked, so now what is he being charged with? And then the officer said in the most solemn way possible, murder. And then I just remember hearing the break in her voice, and I never forgot it, and I'll never forget it. And then she was like, murder? Like the way, it was just a break in her voice. Something broke there. And it just, I just wanted them to just get me out of there. Just like, I didn't want to, I just wanted to go. I was embarrassed. I felt terrible. I just wanted to just get out of this space as quick as possible. I just wanted them to just like take me and go. But I'll never forget the break in her voice. She was shocked, and there was a lot of dismay and terror in what I heard in her voice. Mm-hmm. That I would imagine she never thought that, her youngest or her middle child, would be in that type of a condition.
Mm-hmm. And so you just had lunch with her over the weekend. I saw her picture.
Yeah.
Beautiful woman, right? Like moms, parents, I should say, we bear a lot. And obviously you have done a lot in those years. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I think I read, and social media is fantastic for this, is I think you talked about how much time you spent in the library, which is another thing that I think we just kind of have in common. And so you spent your time in there getting mentored and reading. And so school wasn't maybe it for you, but learning, and it feels like your curiosity has always been consistent. And so sometimes I think we conflate the structure of education with young people's willingness to learn. Mm-hmm. I think they're the same thing. And so you go into prison and you are on a path to where you are now, or what?
Now, I go into prison and I made sure the prison was feeling my anger. So, I mean, when I first went in there, I was on a war path. And like, I wanted them to feel my anger and my rage. I couldn't believe that jury brought back a guilty verdict and that like I was sentenced to life. And so I was not a happy camper, and I wasn't pretending to be a happy camper. And so I got into a lot of altercations. Those first few years inside of prison was very tumultuous, very challenging, and very dark. Those were dark days in my life, to such an extent that the prison made the decision that it was going to separate me from the rest of the masses. And so they sent me to a prison called Oak Park Heights. Oak Park Heights was a level 6 security prison at the time. That's a super maximum. It was one of only a handful of super maximum prisons in the entire country. Because it was a level 6 facility, inmates from all around the country could actually be housed in there. And so they had federal inmates and some real serious dudes was in there. And so each unit only can hold 50 people. Now, a regular unit can hold hundreds and hundreds of people. I mean, hundreds of people are in the units. But in Oak Park, because it's all about command and it's all about control, it's 50 per unit, right? And it's amazingly controlled. It's incredibly controlled. And so after a couple of years, they sent me to Oak Park Heights. And it was in Oak Park Heights that I ran into one of my most endearing mentors. He actually began to train me in the art of boxing. And so, I was just thinking that I was training so that, I could continue to give these dudes the business and back them up off of me, And so, but what he was actually teaching me was how to discipline my mind and discipline my body, right? And see myself differently positioned than what I was. I started to have a little bit more, I started to walk with dignity and aplomb, right? Because I could carry myself differently. I didn't know that training was going to do all of that for me. Now, he wasn't the one that tried to advance me academically, but I think what he put on me was the discipline necessary to accelerate academically. And even when I started studying law and ultimately fought to get my life sentence reversed on appeal, It was the discipline that I received from him that even today it carries with me now. I am a soldier. I am disciplined. And that really helped. He was like a 60-year-old man. I was a teenager. I was probably 19 at the time, right? So he was like a father figure for me too. He also was studying the Bible with him and a number of other things. So this was one of the first mentors. But then I had access to brothers like Willie Lloyd, who gave me just dozens of books to read. I kidnapped a lot of his books. He never said nothing, never made me feel bad. Now, I wasn't the same way when I started mentoring. You weren't going to just hold on to my books. But these brothers would just give me books to read and challenge me and just really help me grow intellectually, spiritually, emotionally. They prepared me for where I'm at today.
The guys who did that for you, were they mostly lifers?
Mostly lifers.
Mostly so they came through and they knew that was the way that they chose to give back, is to make sure you didn't come back?
Exactly. Exactly. But I'm coming back, and I've come back. I've come back plenty of times. And I told some of them, I'm coming back to get you out, right? These are some of the best men that I've ever met in my life. And this community would only benefit by having these type of towering, they respected out here in these streets. They can say things out here in these streets that none of these other people running around claiming to be leaders can say. And like that, people would move. Right. But that's because they built rapport with people over many, many, many years inside of there. This is why people wonder, how can somebody like me, right, slide down on some of the brothers out here and then they say, Brother Darris to me, right? Young people, they wonder, like, how is he able to connect with the people in the streets and the police chief and this over here? It's because I spent a lot of years in there building relationships. These brothers know me. When they needed a noodle or something to eat, they came to me. I provided that for them, right? I was also elected as the Grand Sheik in there. That's a religious title for some of the. So I was one of the youngest Grand Sheiks in the country. Every single Friday, I'm dropping measures off of the podium. So I didn't come out here and all of a sudden started speaking. I was trained as a servant leader by them brothers in there over many, 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 many years. What I'm doing out here now is a continuation of the training and the discipline and the mentorship that I had received over many years inside of prison. Mm-hmm. They told me how to center community. They told me how to serve as a leader, right? They trained and taught me all of this. I didn't come out here and learn this. They trained me and taught me how to be a servant leader.
Mm-hmm. And I imagine that not just through your own story, because I want to make sure that when people hear us talking, it is not about people not doing time for any crime that was committed, but it is about the system being fair. And it is about providing opportunity for people to come back out and be successful. Right? Is that what we're talking about? Is it more than that? Or is it less than that? Or?
Well, it's more than that, right? So let me take a step back. I got to highlight this. We're not talking about the stuff that I'm talking about, we were breaking the rules to do. So, they weren't supposed to give me books. Technically, they violated prison policy every single time they gave me a book to read. Sometimes we would be down there on the galley and it'll be 8 or 9 of us around a table reading, breaking down some kind of science, right? We might have read a passage out of a book. And now we're going to go around in a circle. We call it a cipher. And everyone is going to give their portion of understanding. Each one teach one. That's how we learn. That's how we train with each other, right? And it'll be another table on the side of us playing cards, playing poker, loud, slamming the cards down, right? Most of the fights break out because of the poker table. I have had so many experiences in which COs would come up to my group. We sitting around peaceful, we just got books on the table. And these people would tell us we're violating policy because only 6 people can be around the table at once. And y'all look to have 8. So y'all got to break this up. I look right over at the poker table. I'm looking at the poker table. Now, I'm not going to snitch. I ain't going to dry snitch and be like, what, you going to say something else, but you ain't going to say nothing about the poker table? Are they loud? They slamming cards? This is where all the fights is happening? We're quiet. We're disciplined. We're reading books. So I wasn't going to be like, yo, you going to say something else, but not them? But I understood where they was coming from and the wickedness therein. I understood that. right? I understood the threat that what we were doing represented, breaking and cracking open minds. That wasn't cracking no minds open, slamming down cars and dominoes and all of that. That's exactly what they wanted them to do.
Yeah, I was surprised at how many books are actually on the like violation list in prisons.
Some of them is some of the most ridiculous.
I'm just like, they're violating books.
Nathan McCall's Make Me Want to Holler.
I know.
Are y'all serious? Are y'all serious? I say y'all need to stop. All right, yeah. Y'all need to stop.
Yeah, I read that list. I was appalled. I'm like, the lies that we are telling ourselves about what we're trying to do in prison. And I think that the more people know, the more they should be appalled.
Pure mind control. And so even for me to get into the college classes, the prison officials that was getting me in those, we were violating the rules, right? I wasn't, because if you have murder convictions, you weren't supposed to be in the classes. But it wasn't enough people to fill the spots up. And so on the low, the teacher, because it was a teacher who would authorize us to get in there. On the low, they'll get us in there, right? And we also really contributed to the atmosphere of the classrooms. The professors loved us. But if you was convicted of murder, you wasn't. So I'll be sitting in Oak Park, minding my business, watching a TV show. And at the bottom of the dang ticker, it'll say something like, if you have a rape crime or a murder crime, you can't sign up for college. And I'm like, I'm literally just sitting here watching a movie. You know what I mean? It's just constantly hitting, right? You're supposed to like go towel down and have your head low and just hate yourself, right? Now, I can't do anything for one of the worst decisions that I ever participated in my life. I did that, right? But if there is no opportunity for transformation, if there is no opportunity for me to do any work that is good in order to help to give back, in order to help to restore what I have broken and what others have broken, if there's no pathway forward, then why do we continue to live? Why don't we just die, right? If I'm supposed to be perpetually tied to my worst decision, not my best, but my worst decision, and I'm supposed to be defined by that perpetually, then why continue to live? What is the purpose of my life? Is there any more meaning in my life? Is no good that I do good enough? Is it always the worst that I've done 20 years ago, 30 years ago?
Yeah.
How many people have I saved?
Yeah. And I think that's the point of why we're working in this criminal justice reform. And I think that's kind of where we get back to, is that there are people that are on paper. There are people that are having people show up to their jobs. There are people that are pleading to charges or not being able to bond out, and they're just caught in this trap. And maybe they've made some bad decisions, but they're trying to find a way to get out of it, right? So that bad decision isn't weighing them down and their family down for the rest of their lives. There should be opportunity to move through that.
Now, out of 10 people who may have made a bad decision, right? Let's say we have that one person who actually didn't make a bad decision. They're actually innocent, right? But they feel enormously pressured to maintain. They got a family to take care of. They got to get out of here. They got to get out of this county jail. They got to show back up to work Monday. Like, they got to get in there. They can't risk losing it all. So then, yes, they finna take that probation for 15 years. Now, we got a probation cap now that many of us have worked. You all have worked in coalition to put a cap of 5 years. Not 5 years, that's a lot of years. There's been studies that talk about the diminishing returns of being on probation 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's a diminishing return. And actually the probability of the continuation of that actually having adverse effects if you're on too long, right? And so they're thinking that they're getting out. When it's like, yo, you're really actually signing away your right to vote and participate in some of the most basic civic functions of society, right? And you're actually signing up to be locked out of society for 15 years. You thought that you were saving yourself by pleading to something that you know you didn't do, when actually you were sentencing yourself. And at any time in the 15 years, you can be technically brought back to a county jail on a technical violation, not a new crime, but a technical violation. You showed up too late. You forgot to report in. just something technical, right? I forget all the time. You know what I mean? And so I'm very fortunate that people call and be like, did you? And I go, oh, damn, you know what? I didn't. Because you got a life that you're living. So yeah, you might be signing yourself up for something that's worse than you would have if you continued to fight for justice and for what was right. But I get it. It's a lot of pressures.
Yeah, I know that I've been, I'm a bit of an observer, and I think I shared with you that I saw you working down in Atlanta, and I've seen you in different spaces, and I'm always impressed with a couple of things. One is that you're so open about sort of your past and being in prison, and giving, I would say, honor to the men that influenced you while you were there, I think, and then coming out with such passion and connection to making a difference for others, and how they experience not just the justice system, but really just justice, right?
Yeah.
And, before we go, I want to touch on this because you and I were on the Police Deadly Force Working Group that first day. So it was a commission, the Attorney General and the Commissioner of Public Safety put together sort of this task team. I think there were 18 or so of us. It was a 10-month deal where we were looking at how to reduce deadly incidents by police. It was March of 2019, and we concluded, the report came out March of 2020. Mm-hmm. And now we're a year later. And so we just put out sort of the progress to that. So if anybody wants to go look, they can go and find that on the AG's website. But that first day, so when I got asked to be on it, and so the Minneapolis Foundation funded it. And then I got asked to personally sit on it. So I sat and thought about that for a long time on number one.
Of course you did.
Man, do I have the emotional bandwidth? First of all, we're going to be listening to people that have been impacted by police deadly incidents. Do I have the emotional bandwidth to sit and listen to family members who have lost loved ones? That within itself was it felt like the biggest responsibility. Mm-hmm. I think the second thought that I went through is whatever we produce is going to be disappointing to someone. And am I willing to take the shots that are going to come my way?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
And obviously I decided to do both.
Thank God.
Thank God. Right. But then that first meeting, I was really about to just backtrack.
And I felt that energy. I felt what was happening in that moment. I wanted to make sure that I touched bases with some of y'all because I knew I was going to need y'all.
Yeah. Yeah. So the first meeting, we come in and there was a group of 40 people that just protested the mess out of that table for 3 hours.
Shut that whole one down. Shut it down.
I was good until one of them stood behind me, and then I had to go a little north side. I had to get a little north side. You can stand in front of me all day, but you got to get from behind me. Because that's, you're going to have to get in front of me. But I just sat there because we're here for them.
Yeah.
And the way that change looks like when you are doing it from within looks different. And to have your community kind of look at you like you're selling out or you're dealing with the devil. There was just something that was creating just great angst for me.
Yeah.
That particular day. I'm glad I stayed with it, but man, that was one of the hardest days I've had.
Yeah, it was intense, but I run with that crowd. So and so it was really intense. They were looking at me like, "Why are you here?" It's but I was there as a function of ACLU. We wanted to make sure that we as part and parcel to these discussions. It's very, very, very fortunate for this community that you was there as well. I watched, I was impressed and actually motivated by it. And I look forward to the day in which I'm able to carry myself with the type of dignity and with the passion and with the vigor and be able to speak in the very clear and cogent way that you were able to communicate very clear idea. It was almost mechanical, right? And I'm not trying to, but it was very methodical. That's a better word. It was almost methodical when you began to speak. So you would listen and then speak methodically. And then I think because we all knew that whatever you was going to ultimately say was going to be pretty reasoned and weighed. I think people was, as soon as you started, people would just like key in and hope that like you would, land closer in. And so the role that you played to get us past so many impasses, right? And to prevent, because I was always ready and willing. If we're gonna bring this fire, then I'm gonna bring the fire, right? And so they always knew my energy I was always ready to go there if they wanted to go there, right? But we needed to be able to continue to move because we're all on the same side in some matters of speaking, but we're coming from different perspectives here, right? Yeah. And we needed to be able to be functionally moving forward. And I was just really grateful on so many occasions that you were able to help navigate us through really, really difficult areas of discussion, really difficult, in which sometimes I remember that time when we just had to take a break. We had to take a break. It got too hot. I was hot under my collar, and we needed a break. And then I saw you and the judge and I saw y'all caucusing, right? And the prosecutor, the county attorney, I forget the name, because we was at another point in which we wasn't seeing it the same way. And I wasn't willing to do too much moving, right? And they wasn't willing to do, because we're all thinking we're taking major losses here. And so to be able to work these compromises out and to watch you do it, it was very instructive to me. And I can't tell you enough how much I really do. History is going to record how valuable you were to that process.
Thank you for that. That was a good day. And we caucused. They're like, why don't you trust me? I'm like, why don't you trust me? Why don't you trust us? Like, there's a community voice. But I think that, we caucused right at the Minneapolis Foundation out the door. We came back in, like, we reached an agreement.
I was like, what? And I was like, what? And then the lobbyist was like, what? So like, we like this, and so, and it was reasonable. I wasn't, I couldn't get everything I wanted, and we all didn't get everything we wanted, but we worked this thing out. And if you notice, there wasn't too much thinking that had to be done, with the legislature in the last session. Why? Because we did all of that. We fought them battles and we fought them things enthusiastically and with vigor. And so what they ended up doing was implementing what we came up with.
That's exactly right. And I think, there were so many lessons, right, of like just sticking it out. I remember that first day that I said was as grueling. And
it was long.
Man, it was long. I just felt all kinds of offended. I felt all kinds of compassion. I mean, there was just a range of everything.
Like 15 hours.
Man, and I remember when we took a break, and then one of Tashira, who was protesting, as I walked by her, I looked at her, and then we gave each other a hug. Like, you've been screaming at me for 3 hours, sis. Just give me a hug, right? So we like hug each other and we move along. But when I'm looking at what's happening, right, and I know this is a broad sweep, but you have people that won't sit at tables with people they disagree with. And we basically sat at a table with people that we probably wouldn't even be with for 10 months. And we've made a lot of progress on that one thing, right? And being able to stick with it, or being able to say, look, I'm willing to compromise to some extent, but, but there are some things that I'm unwilling to move on. And so, tell me your thing and let's figure it out. And us be able to move in a room, I think, was a really important lesson that I understood, and I know the importance of it. It's not like it doesn't happen every day, but in issues like this, that is so polarizing, to be around the table. We were around the table with 60% law enforcement, basically.
Yeah. But we had firepower. Like, we had strong energy on our side too. And so while we were outnumbered, like I said, when you spoke, all sides listened, because it was going to be fair and measured and all of that. And so, we had the right people. I'll say the community was really, really well served. by having us there. Dr. Tyner, Dr.
Lewis.
Brittany Lewis. You know what I mean? They were really well served by the brilliant minds who were, we were stewards of our community inside of those very difficult discussions. And like, it was difficult, because, we have to hear testimony of anguish testimony of family members, that'll never see their loved one again. And then all of the technical testimony, then we would have to go and decipher through all of that stuff and come up with meaning and then come up with policy based off of that meaning. And so it wasn't the easiest task. No,
it wasn't. It wasn't. But it was worth it. It felt worth it. And I was glad to be with you. I witnessed you be pretty excellent at that table too, by the way.
I tried to be a poker and a prod.
I'm like, I can move all sides, and then you come out with and policy HR 2050. You have all the policies down the pad. I'm like, oh, okay, this dude's studying. I know human behavior.
No.
I can talk and I can listen. I'm observant and I can pull it together. But I do feel like that was just.
I'm a legal beagle. I'm gonna study up on it. You know what I mean? You ain't gonna be able to say it, right? So and so that goes back to even when I was in. I know we got to go. But even when I was in prison, I started studying. I got my GED and I started going to college classes. I would read up on the subject of the professor several months before the class, just so that I can go in there and debate with those professors. And I was a total contrarian my entire sentence in there. And I'm a contrarian today. That's why I need people like you.
I love it though. I love all of everything that you're bringing.
Everything brought together, I'm just not going to be trying to do all of that. I'm going to be providing that clashing force. But we need bridge builders. We need people to contextualize, and we need people who got access in spaces and places that other people don't. People like you and I are now getting access deeply into helping to create policy reforms. We're bridges between a lot of the energy and efforts that are boots on the ground. We help to translate that into actual policy that is actually implemented. And so we're all operating in our capacities and serving these roles. Yeah,
it's one of the, I guess as we close, one of the things where I think about when people are like the activists, and I'm like, there's activists. I feel like activists are taking on, I'm not even going to be able to articulate it at this point, but there are people that are protesting and there are activists that are leading movements like BLM and other movements, right? There are activists that are activating within organizations and institutions and really pushing change.
Yep.
There are activists that are working on policy level. I really invite people to look at who are the change makers.
Come on.
And the way that they deliver how they do change might be different.
Right.
Because I think that especially as the broader community, as the white community is looking at how they can be allies, mm-hmm. I think they are, I would look at all of the breadth of what people are bringing to this work right now.
Right.
Because there are folks that really need support, that are moving really fantastic change within systems. I would say like you, the work you did at the ACLU, the work you will do at the Minnesota Freedom Fund. And I really appreciate the work of that organization. We will be partnering with you really closely. Yep. And if listeners want to find out more, they can go to that website, the Minnesota Freedom Fund.
Yep. .org. Yep. Definitely.
.org. Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you. Thank you for having this conversation.
This was painless. I was all scared.
I told you, I don't know why.
Hey, you know why. I seen you and I ain't want none of that energy. I've seen you in operation. I was like, oh God, let me study up. I don't even know what to study. She won't even tell me what to study.
No, because I wanted to be just like this, just free flowing. I wanted to be about you. I just like to prompt questions and let people talk.
That's what's up. And I appreciate you. I appreciate all the work you're doing. I look forward to having, a really long-term partnerships with you and just being excited to see you in space. And when I see you in space, I know everything is all right.
Good deal. Back at you.
That's Elizer Darris and our host, Chanda Smith-Baker. And once again, if you like what you hear, please follow us from wherever you listen to your podcast. To learn more about the Minnesota Freedom Fund, visit minnesotafreedomfund.com. I'm Sue Pak-Kienitz from the Minneapolis Foundation. Thank you for listening to Conversations with Chanda.